everyone. Thank you for joining us for this month's Lunch and Learn. Super excited um, about our presenter today and just super excited to welcome all of you. Some of you are new to the Women's Power Collaborative format. Some of you are veterans at this point, regardless of the time you've been a part of the Women's Power Collaborative. Just wanted to intro you to the WPC, as we call it. It's a platform for anyone and everyone who's interested in building women's political power. That's essentially all the criteria that we have for Women's Power Collaborative. And so there's three things under the Women's Power Collaborative. Just so I can share with you really briefly, we do a lunch and learn every month. So this is a part of the lunch and learn series where one of our partners that we work with, presents information that you want to know or that you might want to interact with and learn more about, and maybe more about the organization that they're with or the topic they're presenting. And the lunch and learn is welcome to anyone who has something interesting they want to present. So we're not gatekeeping anything, but if you have something good that aligns with building women's political power or women's participation in democracy, we want you to be a part of that, be a part of it. So that's the Lunch and Learn is a part of the Women's Power Collaborative. Another part of the Women's Power Collaborative are the all region meetings. And that's really an opportunity for you. There's no speaker. We're all speakers in that sense. And they're on the all region meetings where there might be some policy things, capital P, lowercase p, that are happening in your area relative to building political power. And you want to share it or you want to learn more. Maybe you're tussling with a policy issue, and maybe you come to the Women's Power Collaborative all region meeting to find out that you're not the only one who's dealing with that particular issue. And there's people of varying experiences within women's representation or democracy reform that you want to share or have a question. It's really a platform of engagement with one another. And we used to do that regionally, but we decided to make it one meeting so that we can share and cross collaborate across the country and actually internationally, because we have occasional international participants as well. So that's another part of the Women's Power Collaborative. The other part of the Women's Power Collaborative, it's more of a rapid response. So sometimes when there's something that's happening, legislation that's happening, and we want people want to know, we want to use the Women's Power Collaborative as an opportunity or a vehicle to educate. So we have webinars. Sometimes those are in the evening, sometimes they're during the day, but they're more of a rapid response to something that you might see federally that's happening, and we want to make sure everybody's educated on it. So those are the three main tenets of the Women's Power Collaborative. There's no cost to be a part of the Women's Power Collaborative. We just ask that you attend as you can. Every meeting it's not feasible. We understand, but just plug in when you can and engage and interact, and that's pretty much it. But the goal is that there's a lot of the goal is that we want to bring things under one umbrella, because a lot of times things are happening in different places and we don't communicate with one another. So you don't know sometimes we don't know what's happening in other spaces. So that's literally what it's for. So without much ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker for today. Stephanie we go back. Like, I remember my first interaction with Stephanie we met in Cincinnati over
Yeah.
drinks, which was really cool. So Stephanie, when I first joined Represent Women 2 years ago, Stephanie's like, I'm in Cincinnati. We should just, grab a drink. And we did on a Saturday afternoon, which was very cool. But Stephanie was formerly with Vote Run Lead, which was one of our amazing partners. And then I'm excited to start a new partnership with Stephanie under her role with VoteRiders. So I'm going to let her talk about VoteRiders and what she does and all the good things. But one thing I do know about Stephanie is that she's a fierce advocate for women's representation and women's ease to interact with democracy. So once we found out that was, her passion and mine, we almost became besties right away. So super excited for you to join us. And so, Steph, you just go through the presentation how you want. I don't know, you tell us what you need. She has a presentation. And I don't know if you want for folks to wait till the end for questions during, however you do it. I'll just hand it over to you, and I'm here to support you. So everyone, welcome Stephanie to our Lunch and Learn.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much, Tamaya. It's good to be back in the
Oh,
Women's Power Collaborative space. Can folks hear me okay? Okay, perfect.
yep.
Yeah, I'm glad to be a part of the Lunch and Learn series. I've been to these in the past, but haven't presented before. So I'm excited to share a little bit more about my role at VoteRiders, the organization, and the work that we do around voter ID assistance and making sure folks have the ID that they need to vote where they live and have their questions answered. So I will share my screen to walk through some slides. And then as far as questions, I might have a hard time seeing the chat as I'm going. So maybe we can wait for questions at the end and kind of go through them. And it's great to see folks joining from all over. I should mention VoteRiders is a fully remote organization, but I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. And it's a big day in New York. If you're a Knicks fan or you're following the Knicks, it's parade day. So it's a fun day. Let me share my screen. Perfect. And then can folks see this okay? Awesome. So what I will talk through in the slides related to VoteRiders and our work is voter ID in the elections this year, kind of what you need to know, the lay of the land, how VoteRiders as an organization can help you and your members and the folks that you serve in your community, and then some opportunities for collaboration that I would love to talk more about with folks who are interested after. So I can share some of those and then I'll put my email in the chat if folks are looking to connect one-on-one as well. Okay. So what I'm going to walk through, as I mentioned, is VoteRiders as an organization. Some of you might be new to our mission and the work that we do, so I will just touch on that, talk about the impact of voter ID laws, what the scope is, and like the number of ID laws we've seen passed recently at the national level, and then also what that looks like in states where folks are leading and leading work on the ground. And then really dig into the tools and services as an organization that we offer as direct assistance to voters. And then ways that you can get involved, like I said, ways that your organization may want to partner with us. So who we are as an organization for folks who are new, we are a C3 national organization whose mission is to eliminate ID barriers to the ballot so every eligible voter can cast a ballot and make sure that ballot counts. The vision that we have toward achieving our mission is we're working toward a thriving American democracy in which ID requirements for voting don't prevent folks having their voices heard at the ballot box. And then, as far as our history and leading the work, we've been leading work on the ground for 14 years, educating voters across the country on the ins and outs of ID laws and providing free one-on-one and group assistance to clients, to voters who may need support on getting the ID due to these stricter ID laws across the country. So we're really proud of doing that financial and direct assistance support. What the work looks like, we work alongside partners to inform communities about ID laws. We're equipping partner organizations in spaces like this with the tools that we have to offer that may be helpful, specific to voting access. We work in the advocacy space. We're newer in working on advocacy at the federal and state level for pro-voter policies and pushing back against legislation that suppresses votes. And then, like I said, we provide that direct assistance across the country. And I'll kind of go into where we are on the ground and then where we're working nationally as well. And then this is just a little bit on the impetus of the founding of our organization from our founder, Kathleen Unger. This quote that she shared with us is that she started the organization knowing about the tens of millions of American adults who did not have a government issued photo ID, but learned from experience about the disenfranchising effect of voter confusion, which really made our mission twice as urgent. So now looking at, like I said, where we are on the ground and the work that we do. So we work nationwide, and that's really through sharing our tools digitally alongside partners. Um, And then on the ground, we are in states across the country where we can have the most impact, as well as where we've seen strict voter ID laws come into play. So this year in 2026, what that looks like is we are in 7 priority states, having organizers and state directors who are experts in their communities in Arizona, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Wisconsin, leading community outreach and engagement and direct assistance. And we've been in these states for quite some time. Now, just moving into kind of the impact of these ID laws and what they're looking like right now for folks who might be newer to voter ID and voter access and pro voter policy. It's just kind of a refresher. So what we know is that voter ID laws are new versions of old tactics meant to suppress votes, right? And what they do is they require ID to vote, and they're sweeping the country. In every election, we're seeing them pop up more and more, and they are having the effect and impact of blocking millions of Americans from accessing their freedom to vote. And then this map really shows the onslaught of these ID laws and how they have become more prevalent since the 2020 election. So, what we know is that across the country right now, in total, there are 38 voter ID laws on the books. And you can see that 23 of them, you can hear a little background noise, it's fun on the streets. 23 states have passed new or stricter ID laws since the 2020 election. So you can see all of those states in pink are where we're seeing stricter ID laws on the books since the last federal election. In purple, those are the ID laws that were enacted prior. And then the fewer states that you see colored in black are the states right now without ID laws. And this is current. As an organization, want to point out that it's important that we do research to inform the assistance that we're providing around ID and how we are showing up in advocacy spaces and working alongside partners. And so this research that we did in 2023 alongside our partners really pulls out some of the numbers on the impacts of ID laws for citizens in this country. So what we found is that 34.5 million voting age citizens lack a current government issue photo ID. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, some of the specifics of the types of IDs and barriers that folks brought forward in this research. So related to driver's license as a form of voter ID, 20 million citizens don't have driver's licenses. And what was cited is different barriers related to the cost of those IDs, of getting those driver's licenses, the time and bureaucracies that folks are encountering at the issuing offices where they need to go and get those IDs. That's really impacting them having them to vote. And then in the green screen, you'll see that there's a lot of misinformation and confusion around these ID laws and what ID is needed where folks live. 55% of folks in states where an ID is required to vote in person don't know that the ID law is on the books. So the education and outreach with these changing laws is really critical. And then lastly, we know that these laws really magnify existing inequalities. So citizens of color are 4 times more likely not to have a current government issued photo ID compared to white citizens. And then digging into a little bit more about this voter confusion, we know that this is the intention, right, with voter suppression, that they can be intimidating, they're difficult to understand, they vary by state, and they're constantly changing. Confusion levels within our research and survey of voters are even higher when it comes to the specifics around ID laws for voting by mail and what that requires compared to voting in person. We've found that young voters are more likely to be confused or uncertain about the voter ID laws where they live, and if student IDs, for example, can be accepted and what institutions they are an accepted form of ID from. And then lastly, related to poll workers, with these changing laws, poll workers are oftentimes not receiving the updated training that they need to be able to provide clarity for folks who are coming to their poll site related to what ID is required, and that's really critical. For this slide, just wanted to outline or define for folks these different types of laws, just because we've seen when we looked at that map at the federal level, documentary proof of citizenship laws like the SAVE Act that continue to come up, had passed the House, not gone anywhere in the Senate, and then folks probably just saw today that the Trump administration is trying to tie a vote in the Senate related to the SAVE Act to a confirmation hearing. So the work of advocates is critical. And I know a number of folks in this space have been doing advocacy with their memberships around pushing back and encouraging folks to vote no on bills like the SAVE Act. That's a documentary proof of citizenship law. And then the voter ID laws that are oftentimes kind of copycats in state of, of those bills. So for DPOC laws, just a definition here is that they're laws that require voters to prove their citizenship with a document like a passport, a birth certificate in order to register to vote. But they also apply to voters who are already registered, but who make a change to their registration. So for example, if you move, you would need to provide proof of citizenship just to stay registered to vote. And I know folks in this space know the significant impact that these DPOC laws would have on women across the board related to women who get married and change their name, and then that name does not match the name on their birth certificate. I think the latest number that I saw was 69 million women would be impacted by the passage of a bill like the SAVE Act at the federal level, which is a DPOC law. And then for the voter ID law, these laws, on the other hand, are an important factor after registration. And so it's an additional requirement, as folks know, for proving identity and state residency when registering to vote. So they either require or request that voters confirm their identity using a specific form of identification when they're at the polls to cast their ballot. And then specific to proof of citizenship research, I know I went into the specifics around birth certificates and the impacts of women. Overall, across the country, 21 million US citizens don't have or couldn't easily access these documents proving citizenship, like a passport or a birth certificate. And a lot of the barriers similar to what I talked about with driver's licenses, are even compounded with these type of documents that cost more money and are oftentimes more cumbersome and bureaucratic to get issued. Really important to talk about the groups that are most harmed by voter ID and documentary proof of citizenship laws, folks that are already marginalized. And I'll go into in the next few slides after some of the specific tools that we have to reach audiences and communities where they are who are most impacted. And this kind of outlines all of the folks who were disproportionately impacted by these voter suppression bills. Next, excited to talk about, on the flip side, how we're helping, how we're working alongside partners and providing the resources as an organization with a very narrow mission of supporting folks who are impacted by these bills. So voter ID assistance is something that we're really proud as an organization to offer. So we help folks year round get any ID that they need to vote and thrive in all areas of their lives. We know that it costs a lot of money, as I said, takes a lot of time. If you're living in a rural community, it takes even more time sometimes to get to an issuing office. So, what we're able to do is a few things to support folks. As an organization, we cover the cost of these documents that folks need, anything from a birth certificate or social security card or other documents that go into receiving those IDs. We're able to work with folks who need support to arrange and pay for the cost of travel to get the IDs, to get to the issuing offices and set up those appointments. And then lastly, in instances where legal support is needed, we're able to provide pro bono legal assistance to voters who have specific document issues and have folks on staff who lead that legal support. A tool that we offer is that folks use year round and pretty regularly also around primary season, general election season, and when voter deadlines are coming up is our helpline and chatbot. So this is available in English and Spanish, where we share this resource with folks that they can call into. The number is at the bottom of the left hand side of my screen. It's also on our homepage on our website. So folks can call, they can text to chat with someone one-on-one. They can also email us for this one-on-one support, anything from asking a question about ID requirements to moving forward with getting the support that they need and setting up one-on-one like virtual time or in-person time to make sure they have what they need to vote. So this is our helpline and chatbot, and it's staffed by VoteRiders staff as well as really thoroughly trained volunteers. So sometimes folks who are interested in supporting voters in their community in this way, will sign up to join us as a helpline volunteer, and I'll share that info as well. Specific to specialized resources that we have on voter ID and making sure folks can access them. These QR codes go to specific pages on our website that are walking folks through requirements and questions and support mechanisms depending on communities that they're a part of, as well as where they live. So we have a specific walkthrough page for trans and non-binary voters, for student voters. I was talking a little bit earlier about those ID laws vary state by state related to if or not and what types of student ID are accepted. So that's really critical that folks can have access to that information. For citizens who are newly naturalized, what that process looks like and how they're able to get support with the documentation, as well as voters with disabilities. And we're able to, with these resources, if they're ever helpful for folks, we can create like customized QR codes for tracking if you were interested in sharing these resources with your members or community. State Pages is another resource that is accessible on our website. So at the bottom is a broad, like check your state ID rules, and it's kind of broken down into at the top, states with strict ID laws on the books, and then others that don't, but then has information on everything from what you need to register to vote, the differences from voting in person to vote by mail, to kind of break down some of those barriers of confusion and misinformation there. And they are specific to all 50 states and DC across the country that folks can access from that link at the bottom. And I can probably work with Tamaya after to share out some of these links too, because I know I'm not dropping all of them in the chat. Yay. Our work alongside as an organization partners is really critical to making sure we're reaching communities who may need ID support and partnering on education and outreach and direct assistance. So we work with folks across issue areas, across everything from public institutions like libraries to law firms, churches, faith-based organizations. And we're really providing the resources or training or support mechanisms that are hopefully most useful for the communities and audiences that folks serve. And then some opportunities, hopefully, that you might want to get involved or share with your organization to partner. So info cards are a key resource that we provide to C3 organizations for free. These are a really great resource. Like I mentioned with our state pages, they are there. We have 50 different versions for each state that has a few things on them that I think are really helpful when folks are tabling. They're oftentimes like a complement to organizations that are leading voter registration. So after folks are registered, they know the details around what they need when they're heading to the polls where they live. So we provide these voter ID cards in those instances. And then if folks are doing direct voter contact, C3 voter education, canvassing, for example, sometimes they order our voter ID cards to be a part of that like leave behind packet for voters at the door too. And that's the link to order the cards at the bottom and can definitely support with the logistics around that with anyone who might find them helpful. And then this is okay. I was like, can you see this in the screen? This is the ID card, but it's not working with my background. But it has our helpline on there. It has specifics on voter registration and what's required, and then kind of like a handy back pocket guide that folks can bring to the polls related to what types of ID are accepted on election day. We're also able to work with partner organizations to co-host voter ID clinics if that's something that folks are interested in. So at the beginning, I talked about the 7 states where we have folks on the ground. Those are states where if partner organizations are working with members or clients and you think that having a VoteRiders staff on site for a table or during an event would be helpful, we're able to do that in person. If not, we're available to partner virtually related to voter ID support and hosting a clinic to provide one-on-one support for any state that might need serving and for where you're based. So I would be the point person for anything outside of the 7 states where we have folks on the ground. But if you're based in those others and you'd like to be connected to our on the ground teams, I can share that information to make that happen. And then we also work with folks to co-host voter contact events and state-specific trainings. So again, all of the voter contact work that we do is C3. We're able to co-host these events in a few different capacities. So we are able to reach out to and own the logistics behind letter writing parties. We do text banking, we do phone banking. The platform that we use for text banking and phone banking is Call Hub. I'm sure many folks have used that platform before, but we're able to we're able to pull the list, set up the scripts, and it's very specific to reaching low propensity voters, first time voters. We're able to target based on communities folks serve as well. And then we're doing it around key election moments as well as year round, just asking folks if they know the voter ID law in their state, do they need any support on getting that ID, and then having that additional script information and support for folks who are participating in those contact events to really connect with folks one-on-one in that way. So we're able to co-host those events if anyone's interested in kind of leading on the setup of that. And then we do also do state-specific voter ID trainings if that is helpful for folks. Say you're based in Michigan and you're wanting to really dig into the specific Michigan resources that we have and the ins and outs of the ID law for voting in that state, what's coming up on the ballot. We have experts to work with you on those specific trainings, as well as working alongside partners for what advocacy is needed in that specific state. So let me know about that if that's an interest as well. And that was the last slide that I had for like possibility of just kind of thinking for the typical areas that we partner for folks. But that is my contact information as well. I will drop that in the chat, and then where to find us online if you're new, like I said, to VoteRiders. That's our website. That's where to find us on Instagram, where we're pretty active. I think my comms and digital folks would want to say we're always open to digital collaboration too. And if you have advocacy calls to action or voter ID, pro voter policies that would be helpful for us to lift up for our online community, we would love to do that as well. So I will stop sharing my screen now and then can also look at the chat to see if there's anything that I missed from folks.
First of all, thank you, Stephanie,
Yeah.
for your presentation and walking through. I'm always interested in partnership because what happens is a lot of organizations don't have the capacity or the resources, but voting is super germane to a lot of things that we want to get done and a lot of things that need to happen means expanding, those who are able to vote. So if there's organizations, I'm specifically looking at a comment from Jenny. Jenny DeSaro. And Jenny, I didn't get what organization you were with, but I thought it was a very interesting point you were making. I don't know if Jenny, if you're still here, but like if you could come off mute and kind of talk about the
Yeah.
challenge you were having in Wyoming.
Yeah, thank you. I'm with Equality State Policy Center, and we did litigate. We had a pretty bad voter proof of citizenship law that went into effect that last July, and we tried to stop it and failed. But we didn't like it was dismissed without prejudice, so we can litigate again. And one of the curiosities, and we're rural, we're super rural, low population, but finding folks who were disenfranchised and then finding ones that were willing to speak up.
Mhm.
We're also not apparently a very litigious state. And so people aren't used to lawsuits. And so it was that's just the kind of the background. So we're just waiting for someone to be disenfranchised to then pick it up again and to find us. So I guess that's all I have to say, unless you have other questions. But
No, I
thanks
just
for all of your work and looking at the big picture of statewide.
Yeah. No, thank you for the work that you have been leading in Wyoming. And I'm curious about like you were talking about the voter connection and voter story sharing, like what that has looked like, or if, yeah, when folks are willing to share their stories, how there's been success.
Yeah, I appreciate that too. And thanks for joining, Jenny, on this. And I would love to like just kind of stay in contact with you. To see, I know that Wyoming isn't, like you said, the most populous state, but we know some folks there. So there might be some opportunities for us to leverage our networks, and maybe can make some connections that could be helpful. So yeah, I would love to. I'll seek you out and shoot you an email so we can stay in contact with one another. And then maybe possibly if we were able to find someone, engage you, Stephanie, in your organization in the process, that would be great. Like that would be ideal. Um, Anyone else have any questions or thoughts around just voter ID laws or anything that you've kind of encountered where you are, or thoughts that you may have, or ideas or questions for Stephanie? Yeah, you don't have to have questions if you don't want them. I just want to make sure we're
Yeah.
Well,
taking advantage. Go ahead, Jenny, please.
I have a question. Just because we keep seeing several laws or attempts to pass laws keep returning. And so I do have an intern who's going to be investigating the history of these return laws that keep
Oh,
they're unfortunately we've been on defensive rather than offensive with creative clever ways to make voting better. And so the intern is looking at the patterns and sources and things. But one of the ones I had a question about is this student ID. Um,
Mm.
and just because you might have more of a national perspective, like there's various standards of student IDs and things, and I'm just curious if you have any insights on that kind of legislation.
Yeah, I'm trying to toggle to our student ID specific resource so I can drop that in the chat for you that I think would be the most helpful that kind of goes to specific states. And I mentioned even by state, sometimes it's an unexpired like public institution ID that's accepted. Sometimes it's private, sometimes with these national, as you know, Deepak laws, like student IDs as a whole would not be accepted. So I am going to drop that in the chat that I think would be the best resource. And then as far as the history or specific to state and what your Oregon, your intern is leading, if it's helpful at all to connect with folks on our legal team related to advocacy that they've led or research that we've led at VoteRiders, happy to do that as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, Jenny, and thank you, Stephanie. Anyone else have any questions or thoughts around voter ID? I actually, now I think I have one, Stephanie, if you don't mind. The
Yeah.
7 states that you identified early on where you're on the ground, how did you arrive at those states? Why those states?
Yeah, great question. So we really wanted to be on the ground and be on the ground long term where the resource and outreach support was needed. And that is based on where we've seen strict voter ID laws on the books. So we are in states where voter ID laws have passed, that we've worked in partnership with local organizations for a long time and have kind of existing local partners that refer clients and folks who need support too. So it's where we can have the biggest impact, and that's where strict voter ID laws have been, and we have the resources to have staffing support on the ground there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any other questions? Well,
Stephanie,
yeah,
I'll
hey,
jump in.
please.
So we serve specifically women across the state of Texas, but we are located on a university. And so I'm curious how much work you're doing on university campuses and what you're finding there, because there are other people who really target universities and college age students. So just curious about that.
Yeah, thank you for the work that you do. We do work with students and universities as a whole and campus groups, and we do that in a few ways. So, in those 7 priority states, our state directors and organizers are doing a lot of on the ground work on campuses. So that's doing tabling with our resources, working alongside partners who are doing voter registration, doing some of our voter ID clinics with students on campuses. Around the Houston area is where our regional director in Texas is and does a lot of work there. And then another way that we're working is I know you mentioned a lot of national organizations and student serving
Mhm.
organizations are leading similar type of work. So we work in coalition with Students Learn, Students Vote, for example,
Yeah.
to share our resources, do training, and try to be at these like national student serving conferences and conversations as well, in addition to like the on the ground where we can only really be in like those 7 states at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Good to know.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you, Marlene. Anyone else? Well, I am going to take this time to shamelessly plug our next Women's Power Collaborative. Not shameless, I have no shame. Relative to getting people, so getting people together under the one of the other aspects of the Women's Power Collaborative that we talked about was the all region meeting. So no matter where you are in this country, if you are interested in building women's political power, we ask that you join us on the 24th, so June 24th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And this is an opportunity for you to, again, engage around what's happening. Or you might think you're dealing with something by yourself, and there might be someone across the country go, oh, we're dealing with the same thing. And then there might be some synergy there, or just some opportunities to collaborate. And you just go on our website, and I think someone dropped it in the chat earlier. One of my amazing colleagues did. I think it was you, Alyssa. Um, Drop the link to join the Women's Power Collaborative. So, oh, it was Livia. Thank you, Livia. I knew someone did. To join us. So it's free. You just log into our website, representwomen.org, and then you can, Livia, do you mind redropping that? It kind of is a little bit further away. So, thank you, Livia. And I want to shout out just really fast. We have some new comms people on our team, and Livia and Pong have been like kicking butt, getting the word out for this lunch and learn. So thank you both for your amazing work and getting the word out. But please consider joining the Women's Power Collaborative. That way you'll regularly get emails about the lunch and learns, and we have a kind of a feed where you can share things, interact with one another. So we don't want to be the gatekeepers of these relationships. So thank you all for joining us. We're going to give you 17 minutes of your Juneteenth Eve back. So thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you next week on June 24th for the All Region Women's Power Collaborative meeting. And then stay tuned because July's Lunch and Learn, we're cooking up something I think is going to be very cool around Feminist 250 as relates to the 250 years of this country, but celebrating it centering women, not celebrating centering the country, but centering women's contributions to this country, which I'm super excited about. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you all in a couple of days on the 24th. Thanks again, Stephanie, for joining us and all the good information. Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Todd. Thank you all.